It's time for Game On Hockey with Travis Dunn and Scott Taylor.
Near side, Reeskaver shoots, score!
Talking all things from the blue line to the red line.
A breakaway for Kaprizov. He's in. He shoots. He scores.
And beyond.
Sure, old-time hockey. Like 80s Shore. Yeah.
Now here are your hosts, Travis Dunn and Scott Taylor.
Our next guest, well, my old defense partner of mine way back when he wore those tube skates, not the ones with the plastic bottoms on them, like they wear today, all those fancy things. Craig Ludwig, usually we don't do a guest for 40 minutes or 35 minutes, but we're going to do it with you because there are so many questions that we have to ask. And with that, Scott's going to read a commercial first to pay a bill because you're familiar with that because of Suds with Luds, and we'll get to that conversation too. But go ahead, Scott, do your commercial first.
Oh, thanks, Travis.
You
In
got
business for 50 years. The 2021 U.S. Bauer Retailer of the Year, and they're right here in our backyard. That's Jarrell's Hockey World. You have access to experts who will outfit you and what you need to succeed on the ice, because hockey is what they do. As a Bauer Game Fit dealer, it allows Jarrell's to scan your head, feet, and shooting style to ensure the best performance. Wherever you're hearing this message in North Dakota, Manitoba, Minnesota, remember that Jarrell's has a good stock of CCM and Warrior sticks, bags, and equipment, plus true skates and sticks. True skates made right here in Winnipeg. And introducing new for the season, goalie equipment and sticks, including Vaughn. Goal equipment that can be ordered in custom colors. Remember that. Jarrell's has Winwell off-ice training items as well. And don't forget, Jarrell's has the best in referee jerseys and gear, as well as figure skating equipment. Jarrell's Hockey World has it all, and the service department will ensure that your gear is tuned up and ready to go. Jarrell's Hockey World, 1004 South Washington Street in Grand Forks. Call 701-775-0553. Travis.
You got it. Hey, and one thing, Craig, before we get started, Billy Keene said to say hi. He thinks he sat in a bar with you somewhere and had some beverages years ago. I just wanted to make sure to pass that along.
He's one of thousands of people to say that. I'm proud to say that I'm still here to tell you about it.
Exactly right. Well, Scott's got a lot of questions. I have few because I spent some time with you, but Scott covered you, and he's in Winnipeg tonight. The Canadian de Montreal will be playing the Winnipeg Jets in Winnipeg, a city you love to visit. But I heard that you were afraid of the big picture at the end of the Winnipeg Arena back in the day, the picture of the Queen. What was your first impression of that?
I didn't know who the hell it was. That's what I was afraid. I came from Grand Forks, North Dakota, UND. I don't know who them people are. It's especially royalty. So sad to hear that that's all over with. But you know what? That was my first NHL building. And I can remember the first time I went there, we went there to watch Dougie Smale play. So that was my first taste. And I remember sitting there. They were playing the Montreal Canadiens the night that I was there. And I would have never guessed that it would have began my career playing for that team. So I was in awe the whole time watching. I think I watched Smalers every shift because I was in awe of the way that guy took care of himself, like most of us. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
Exactly.
But anyway, yeah, that was my first taste of a real NHL hockey game. So if I only knew those kind of things then.
Did you have any idea at all that your next taste would be in the uniform of the team you watched that night?
No, to be honest with you, Scott, I never had intentions. I don't think even as a kid I was dreaming about playing in the NHL. I was doing a thing with Kelly Chase and Darren Pang a couple of years ago, and they were kind of shocked when I said that. But I was from a real small town, and everything for us was seasonal, right? We went from baseball to football to hockey to track, and so I had been invited to Cincinnati's Red Camp as far as for tryout. I never did that. I was tinkering with football, and somehow I ended up at the University of North Dakota, and I got very fortunate. My whole career was very fortunate because I felt I was always in the right place at the right time. I had the right kind of coaches at the right time that saw a need for a guy like me that could fit into the kind of team that they were building. So I was just doing a podcast yesterday with Vern Fiddler, and we have some of the same similarities of how he came through, and he had the Barry Trotz and the Dave Tippett and all them kind of coaches that kind of liked the way that we had played.
The voice you hear is Craig Ludwig, former UND, two-time national champion, three-time WCHA champion, two-time Stanley Cup champion. I don't know where you keep all this stuff, but we'll talk about that as we go along. You listen to Game on Hockey in the Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM. He's also the star of Suds with Luds, which we'll discuss even further as we move along. The first time I ever saw you was the training camp in 1979 on the campus, University of North Dakota. You walked into the dressing room that had the universal gym and put the weight down to the bottom and started lifting it. And the rest of us wimpy guys stood back and went, what the heck is that? You kind of set the bar high because your strength was something that was kind of amazing for us little weak guys to take a look at. You were a specimen, my friend.
Well, we didn't have a lot to do in Wisconsin, so every season and every sport, had a little bit different kind of training regiment. And I think when I had kind of made the decision along with, high school coach and my parents to go to the University of North Dakota and being a big time school and probably being a fish out of water, I was trying to just do whatever I could do. And in all honesty, that was probably the second most that I ever trained. The first most was when I was leaving school to go to camp in Montreal, but they were very similar. I was scared to go to both of them and, had no idea what I was getting into either way. But, and again, when I got to school and saw, and now it's hard to say when I saw the facilities, now when the facility that they have now, right? We never had any of that kind of stuff even in high school. Most of our stuff was homemade. We were lifting axles and putting tires on them and crazy things like that. So I guess in a roundabout way, it all kind of paid off at the time. It didn't help my speed at all, that's for sure.
You had been successful at UND, and you end up in Montreal with all of the tradition there. And certainly there's got to be some level of pressure to play for the Canadians. It is still a media center, certainly in Canada. How was it for you to start there? And did you feel that pressure locally?
I didn't, you know what? I didn't feel the pressure because I don't think it even felt real at the time. And probably the reason I didn't feel the pressure is because I never expected to be there. I went into that first training camp, and to be completely honest, I went into every training camp thereafter having the same kind of feeling as I never made a team. There was no way I was going to walk into any team and expect to be in the lineup. And so, I had some real good advice from a legend there in Grand Forks and Gino Gasparini. And when I got traded and when I left, Gino had told me, they drafted you for a reason. And so he said, there's too many players that they go to a pro camp and they try to be more than what they are. And they try to impress them. They said, they know what they're getting with you. Your kind of style, your kind of game, you have to just play that and do that when you get there. And so, but I was ready to go to the minors. I mean, I was surprised that I made it past the first cut and then the second cut. And and then when I got there was probably when it kind of sunk in when we had our very first team meeting, and Bob Gainey, the captain at the time, was kind of leading the whole charge and welcoming the guys to the team and things like that. But even after the first game, I was always ready to head to the minors. And so I think I had Jacques Leperriere my first year as a D coach, and he would kind of hold my hand through things and tell me what to need. Travis, you'll know this one. The best advice I ever got was the glass is your friend. Use it.
Oh boy. You know what? There's less, and nothing dry. And we met up in Moorhead last year at a tournament, and you were telling your players, get the puck up off the glass. I watched a UND game last week when they're 4 feet from the blue line and they weren't getting the puck outside the zone. Craig, you learned, and we all learned the hard way, if you don't gain that blue line, it's going to come back to bite you. And it has way more in Oliver. You play a lot more games than I did, but you were smart enough to figure it out. Pretty important place to go, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and I preach it to this day. I mean, with all of our guys, and I think a lot of players, especially in today, the young kids, they all think they're super skilled, and I think all we're trying to do is give them the right advice that I got a long time ago is when you get there, there's little things that you have to do to stay there, and there's never anything wrong with continuing to try to get better, but when you talk about those blue lines, and I will tell you right now, I say it before every single game that we play, out at your blue line, in at theirs. And but as we know, the game has changed, and there's a lot more puck possession, and I think the rules have a lot to do with that. NHL doesn't have that center line, obviously, and so the game has changed in that sense, and the physicality isn't there the same either. So where you used to be able to tee off on guys that had their head down coming across the blue line, it doesn't happen as much anymore. So, these kids have the confidence to do it. It's an exciting game now. I mean, I love watching it. I could have never played in it. Again, that's why I'm lucky the era that I came up in, because there's no chance that I would ever be playing probably college hockey or NHL hockey with the way that these kids can play and skate. But yeah, you know what? It's funny. A lot of the things we learned 20, 30, 40 years ago, they still are valuable in today's game.
You played 17 years in the NHL and won a cup in your last year, correct?
Yes, sir.
The final season.
Yep.
And you played 80 games that year. And I remember being at your Stanley Cup victory. You didn't look like a guy who was done. Why did you decide to hang him up?
Well, if you can remember being there, you could tell me about it, because I don't remember any of that stuff. But you know what I felt was I actually had thoughts of finishing the year before, and I'm glad I was talked out of it. I think what happened was my twins were getting older. They were just starting to get into high school and things like that. And to fast forward 1 year from when we won it, I was asked by Bob Gainey to go to our farm team, which was in Kalamazoo at the time, and coach our minor league team. And Bob had told me, or asked me, he goes, "Hey, when you get there, we got about 5 days in between games." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "That'd be a good time to, kind of teach them what we're doing up at the big team and stuff like that." And he goes, "Well, take your equipment with you." And I said, "Take my equipment with me? Why the hell would I take my equipment with me?" And he goes, "Well, I'll give you time to skate and put the stuff on and stuff like that." And I said, "Bob, I'll take my gloves and my stick. I don't need anything else, and my skates." And he ultimately told me, he goes, "I'd like you to come back." And that was in January when I went. And I told him I'd think about it. And it's kind of the same reason why I think I finished it, because I told him, I said, "Bob, I would be coming back in mid-season. I had been snowmobiling with about 8 friends for that 3 months, and there was a half barrel strapped to the back of my snowmobile every place I went, and so I was not in any kind of shape to be going back and stepping in the lineup." And I told him, I said, I don't really care about me making the mistakes, but my kids have to go to school the next day, and I would hate to hear some of their friends saying, "Hey, boy, did your dad get smoked last night?" Just that losing an extra gear. And that's actually the way that I felt the year before we won the cup. So I was very happy that I hung on and, got to get that second ring.
Mr. Ludwig, will you be there on the Saturday night, or are you going to be coaching somewhere exotic?
I am supposed to be coaching somewhere, but I had talked to Eddie about this a few days ago, and we had talked to. He's going to be there, I think, like on a Tuesday or Wednesday. He's got something going on. I think he said Thursday.
Yep.
I had said something. I think actually we're in Detroit. That's where our team is playing, in Detroit. So I had thought about looking in to see if I could get in there for Eddie's deal on the Thursday night, and then probably get out of there. But I don't even know if that's doable yet. I got to check on all of our flights and everything else. So yeah, I miss the Eagle more than you know. But that's funny. I say that, and I see him enough, and he skates with us on some alumni days and a couple other times during the week that we skate. So, but you can never get enough of Ed Belfour. I need to take that back. You can get enough. I rescind that a little bit. So some things don't change.
You played 17 years. Who were the best players you played with?
Again, it's hard for me to pick one player, but I will start with Larry Robinson. I would say Larry's, if I could say, he was my MVP. And Larry taught me so much about the position and was in-game stuff. It wasn't, years later. It was as you're playing the game, and I'll throw Bob Gainey obviously in there too, because I've said this many times. And Bob and Darian Hatcher went into the Dallas Stars, now have a Hall of Fame. They went into the Hall of Fame a few nights ago, we had a big to-do down at Gillies in Dallas, and Patch and Bob Gainey went in, and I was standing with his son, Steven, and I told Steven, I've told this to other people too. I don't have the guts to say it right to Bob, but I had said that Bob Gainey is my Scotty Bowman, and he was the guy that was always teaching as he's playing, but those two guys, Guy Lafleur, I mean, and I can go down to some guys like Chris Nyland. He was so important to me, being an American at the time when I was there. But I will always fall back to a couple defense partners that I had, and one in Chris Chelios and the other one in Sergei Zubov. You know, for me, I obviously needed guys like that to be my partners. I knew what my role was. So, but again, I would have a list of guys that I love and played with. But I think Chelly, when I was in that era, and then Zuby that I finished with, they were able to carry the mail, and I could just kind of sit back there and clean up any mistakes that if they ever did make any, that was my job.
You know, and there's also one thread from the University of North Dakota through some of your professional career, and the name was Rick Wilson. Rick was one of the ones that advocated that Gino keep you on that UND hockey team. He saw what you could become and what you did become, obviously, and he was also there in Dallas. So you spent a lot of your hockey career with Rick Wilson in there somewhere, right?
Yeah, we talked about that the other night also. Rick and I were up in the suite together, and Rick is actually coming on the podcast with me. And I have a lot of questions for Rick, only how he handled guys like myself. How did he handle the younger age guys? And he had all the details. He had all the little tricks and the details of playing the game. And it's funny when you say that, Travis, because his wife, Carol, we were at Sergei Zubov's jersey thing a year ago in Dallas, and Carol was sitting down in the bar at the W with me before Rick came down. She got to tell you a little story. And I said, "What's that, Carol?" She goes, "You know, that husband of mine really believed in you." And I said, "Really?" She goes, "I came home after that first week when you were here in your very first year, and I asked him, what the hell's the deal with the big blonde kid out there? He can't even skate." And I said, "Well, yeah, I was kind of surprised too." And apparently Will had told her, "You just wait. He's going to play in the pros someday." So that to me is what these guys that are coaches, not just Rick, all of these guys have been around a long time. They see little details in people's games, and they may not be the best player, but at that particular time, he knew the kind of player that I could be to survive in the NHL. And he was another one along with Gino that just said, "This is what you do. This is what you're good at. And this is why they want you to come to their team. So just do those kind of things." So I had great advice. I had great mentors and coaches and the players and all that.
That's the voice of Craig Ludwig. You're listening to Game On Hockey with Scott Taylor, Travis Dunn each Thursday night. The one thing I'm always very surprised at when I think back, Craig, when we ended up as defense partners one night, and that was the night you scored your only goal in your freshman year at UND, and you know that I never scored a goal, so thanks for setting me up on one. But I was there when you scored that goal. I remember it so vividly. Top shelved it from the blue line. Do you remember that?
No, I think you talked about this last year when I saw you in Fargo or something like that. I don't even remember the bus trip to the hotel today that we're in right now, much less what I remember back 25, 40 years ago.
Short-term memory issues, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're all self-inflicted, though.
Yeah, that's true, too. Yeah, good point. But okay, let's get into the real important stuff. Suds with Luds. What was the impetus of that? What started that up? And we talk about your sponsors and how people can, man, I tell you what, I've watched each and every episode. Entertaining as heck.
You must be bored. You have to be bored.
No, it's just entertaining. Chris Chelios and his mom. I mean, that's classic stuff.
That was gold, though. That with his mom.
It was gold.
She was probably lying too when she said she remembered me. She was nice about that. But you know what? It's how it started was there was a man in Dallas, and there's a pretty popular radio station there called The Ticket. And a guy by the name of Mike Reiner had started that. Well, a couple of years ago, he walked away doing podcasts out of his basement. And 6-7 months ago, he had an idea. He goes, "Listen, I want to get a football player, a baseball player, a basketball player, and a hockey player. Let's do a podcast that covers all four sports." So went out and got Nate Newton from the Cowboys, Derek Harper from the NBA, Kevin Mensch from the Rangers, and they asked me to do it. And so, but it is work. I said, "Oh yeah, sure, let's go. This has got to be easy." But you know, you got to find somebody every week, and you got to tap dance around the other guys in the studio. I mean, we have a nice little studio that we have, and you know, I did a few shows. I think Chelly's show was from my parents' house in Wisconsin, which was a geez, what was it in July? And there's Christmas trees in the background. My mom doesn't even know what year it is, much less what month it is. So, but it's entertaining. I try to keep it light. I've had guys like Ed Belfour, Chris Chelios. I had Chris Nyland on. I just talked to, you're probably familiar with the name Scott Burnside, one of the best NHL. I don't know if you call them insiders or reporters. Scott's going to come on next week. I had Vern Fiddler on a couple days ago. So it kind of runs the whole. I got Burton Gilliam coming on. Scott, you may remember that name from Blazing Saddles. So, I'm trying not to just pigeonhole it into old guys that played in the 80s and 90s. So I may even have somebody that's dialed into the Republican Party, which I know nothing about politics, but Tommy Hicks Jr. may come on the air. So anyway, we have a good time, and it's only an hour or so. Sometimes it goes a little bit over, but I do find I'm doing a lot more research than I thought I had to. I got to at least know a couple of questions asked. So
well, we definitely can understand that when we try to get guests each and every week, guests like yourself, it's hard to get schedules. We did have Troy Murray and Dave Tippett a couple of weeks ago. That was pretty classic, and we should have. Like you, we should have had them individually because the stories are just awesome. Luds, it's been awesome to have you. We got to break and kick you off and do some things because we're off at 6:25 or just after that. It's been great having you on board and great telling the stories. Suds with Luds, and how do we find Suds with Luds? Where is it?
It's everywhere. It's on Spotify, and I think it's on you. I think most of the things are broadcast on YouTube. It's all under Suds with Luds. Yeah, I have. It's funny when you talk about my sponsors. I have a whiskey company, Herman Marshall, and I have a gummy company. So I got the booze on one side and CBD and THC on the other. So I guess they got me pinned down.
We got Jarrell's Sporting Goods on ours. So that's, you're familiar with Jarrell's back in the day in Grand Forks. Hey, Luds, thanks very much for joining us. Enjoy your trip to St. Louis. Hope it's a successful hockey tournament weekend. Enjoy, my friend. Thanks for being on our show.
My pleasure. Thanks, Travis. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Craig.
The great Craig Ludwig, for, again, 2-time Stanley Cup, 2-time WCA, 3-time WCHA, 2-time, I can't even, all the accolades, just a great guy, great stories, we sure appreciate that. Scott, your memories, real quick here before we take a quick break.
Well, I remember him exactly as he described himself. He was big and slow at the NHL level, and was probably really, truly surprised to make the Montreal Canadiens. Yeah. But he was exactly what that team needed. That was firebrand hockey. It was up and down the ice, skate, skate, skate. They needed somebody back there to kind of hold the fort.
Yep.
And that's exactly the way Craig Ludwig played for 17 NHL seasons. And if you look at his record, just grab the league prospects from the stats, barely missed any games.
Right.
He was a big, tough defensive defenseman who played 75 to 80 games a season through his whole career. And I don't doubt Bob Gainey asked him to come back.
Yeah, absolutely.